every non-playoff team's priority going into the 2024 offseason. So now that the regular season is done, the play-in tournament is officially done, and the playoffs have started, I wanted to give like a little evaluation of every non-playoff team's ambitions and priorities, and from my perspective, what I think every team should do slash prioritize slash emphasize going into the offseason. And then after teams get eliminated from the playoffs, I can start to dive into those teams' priorities going into the offseason. So now we're going to start with the non-playoff teams, and we're going to go in the order of worst to best. And the worst team, obviously, is the team that went on, a 27-game losing streak, the worst in league history. It's going to be the Detroit Pistons. I have their priority being adding spacing. This team has a lot of talent. They have like all the young talent in the world, with Cade Cunningham, somebody who has the potential as the face of a franchise. Like if that franchise were a playoff team, I think he has that potential. They just drafted Asar Thompson. Jaden Ivey has potential and prowess. Same with Jalen Duren. But with all that talent and potential, they did go on a 28-game losing streak or something like that. And particularly offensively, something that can help them win games sooner rather than later is increasing their three-point shooting prowess. They were 27th in offensive rating, and I think a major reason for that is the lack of three-point shooting they had and the lack of spacing. They were 27th in three-point attempts and 26th in percentage. A lot of that I blame on just the personnel. The top two perimeter guys on your team besides Cade, that's Jaden Ivey and Asar Thompson. Ivey is more of an on-ball slasher, somebody that's looking to develop consistency from outside, and Asar, we know from the gate that his outside shot will be a work in progress. Also at the 5, Jalen Duren isn't a spacer, and out of necessity, you force Isaiah Stewart into becoming an oversized stretch 4. Also, life wasn't easier when they traded away Bojan Bogdanovic and Alec Burks to New York. Those were your two 40% three-point shooters. Plan of action, in free agency, they can seek to bring back Simone Fontecchio, who shot at a tremendous three-point rate and was really efficient from three-point land. That was a pleasant surprise getting him back, and the amount of production he was able to have, the type of production he was able to have. In the draft, I think they should look to add somebody who is a prolific three-point shooter or just outside shot creator. You can look to add somebody who can be a prolific three-point shooter next to Cade in the backcourt, whether that be Rob Dillingham, Reed Shepherd from Kentucky. And if you do add that player and they're able to have that impact early on, then that might make Jaden Ivey expendable. You could add somebody who could be more of a catch-and-shoot guy in Dalton Connect. Or you could add a skilled forward like Zachary Versace, who projects to be a talented shooter and might have the highest ceiling in the draft. Next, we have Washington, and I think they need to prioritize Deni Avdia's development. He just had a career year of 15, 7, and 4 on 51% from the field and 37% from 3. This should be the concept that the Wizards cling on to for now, Deni's development, because they don't really have that guy that they are building around. They thought it could be Jordan Poole, but after the first year, it's not really looking like he can be that guy. Deni still has, I think, a ceiling to hit, and he just had a career year, and he's on a very, very, very nice contract moving forward. This season for him was a step in the right direction, and this season gives you reason to believe that he can be one of the cornerstones of your rebuild, along with your top 5 pick of this upcoming draft. For Charlotte, I have them prioritizing finding the ideal 2 guard. Brandon Miller had a Rookie of the Year caliber output. He just happened to be drafted along with Victor Wembanyama and in the same rookie class as the reclassified Chet Holmgren. He really impressed me with his efficiency as a rookie and ability to be the number 1 option at times for this Hornets team, and a relatively dependable one at that. Charlotte will be rolling into next season hopeful for a full season of the LaMelo and Brandon Miller duo. Also, they'll be hoping that Mark Williams will have a healthy 3rd year. So now that begs the question, who's the ideal guy to put between Brandon Miller at the 3 and LaMelo at the 1? Could it be Tre Mann, who had a very promising display after he was traded from OKC to Charlotte? He didn't really get to play with LaMelo because he was shut down for the latter half of the year, but is he somebody that can coexist in the same backcourt as LaMelo? He's not a prototypical 2 guard who's just an off-ball threat. He's somebody that can create at a very high level. He's more so a point guard that you would be looking to convert to a 2, but I think he has enough size to fit the bill. and I think it could be a benefit to have another guy in the backcourt to share some of the playmaking duties with LaMelo Ball. Or would the emphasis be adding a prototypical 3-and-D role player next to LaMelo, between LaMelo and Brandon Miller? Somebody like KCP, who could be seeking one of the last paydays of his career. He's entering his mid-30s. He's already got a ring, so he's not going to be ring chasing at this point of his career. If he opts out of his player option, then Charlotte might provide an asking price a bit too steep for Denver to match. I don't know. There's two ways for Charlotte to go about this 2-guard position. Next, we got San Antonio, and I think they got to prioritize expediting their rebuild. They need to make a significant move, man. Wemby is way ahead of schedule. He's already all NBA caliber, in my opinion, and he was a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. So he's Defensive Player of the Year caliber in his rookie season, and he's only going to get better going forward on both ends. We know that the glaring hole for San Antonio was point guard play, and improving that would be able to unlock Wemby even more. We've all heard the Trae Young rumors. Regardless, if there is a player around the caliber of Trae and around the age of Trae available on the trade market this summer, San Antonio needs to be aggressive in pursuing him. As for Portland, I got them cleaning up their salary table. Portland only won 22 games this season, yet they have around $161 million in guaranteed contracts already for the 2024-25 season, and that total will increase with the rookie contract that they add. Based off where their pick lands, it's going to be at least another $8 million to tack on. And there's no real reason to push the luxury tax for having this abysmal of a team. They need to shed some of these lucrative contracts to allow for flexibility and to allow for more reps for their younger talent and to cash in on trade value while it's still there. Grant had a solid season. While that is the lingering idea, among the other 29 teams, Portland should seek to offload him since his value will only continue to deteriorate while he's getting older and while his salary ascends year after year after year. Brogdon will be on an expiring contract at around $20 million. There's $25 million going to Anthony Simons per year, who at that point might be on a different timeline from Shaden and Scoot and your 2024 draft pick. Hopefully it's Alexander Sarr. But yeah, they really need to clean up the salary table for multiple reasons. I got two priorities for Toronto. One of them is out of their control and praying to the lottery gods. The other one they can control, embracing a rebuild. Toronto's pick for this draft is top 6 protected. They should hope that it falls out of the top 6 so that they can have their pick for next draft, which projects to be way better than this 2024 class. That's the consensus of the 2024 versus the 2025 class. That, the 2025 one could have a generational talent in Cooper Flagg or Ace Bailey. And this 2024 class doesn't really, it pales in comparison to the 2025 one. So I think they should hope that they lose their pick for this draft so that they can have it for 2025. Regarding embracing a rebuild, they need to embrace Scotty Barnes. Give Scotty a full season with the official keys to the franchise. He was kind of painted as this guy that would take the keys eventually when they traded Fred VanVleet or just let him walk. Same with Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby, and that finally happened in 2023/2024. But now you can, have a full season with him at the helm instead of just half a season. See what he can do with a full season and see what this team can do with a full season of this new young core 3 of Scotty, RJ, and Quickly. Also, yeah, they got to re-sign Quickly. He's a restricted free agent as well. Going down south to Memphis, they need to trade their lottery pick to fill positional holes. Now, that was what I originally typed, and then, I kind of thought of Donovan Clingan, who could be available around, 5, 6, or 7, where Memphis projects to land in the lottery, but Memphis was the 2 seed in 2023. They're only positioned to have a top 6 or 7 pick this year due to injuries and suspensions. They have a contending caliber core in Ja Bain and Jaren Jackson. They have one of the best young coaches in the league in Taylor Jenkins. And due to injuries, they were able to develop some future rotational pieces in Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams. I think Memphis should go into the offseason with the mindset of a team that is one piece away. And I think if they can add that piece using that potentially very high lottery pick and Marcus Smart's $20 million salary, they can fill that positional need. I see that positional need at either the 3 or the 5. I can see them adding a big defensive-minded small forward to replace what they lost in Dillon Brooks, or a bruising glass cleaner at the 5 to replace what they lost in Steven Adams. Potential targets, I got some players on the Nets, either Nick Claxton, if the Nets don't want to bring him back at a high price tag, or Mikal Bridges if they just want to trade away Bridges and clear the way for Cam Thomas. Elsewhere, maybe Clint Capella if Atlanta wants to clear their center rotation for Onyeka Okongwu. Or I have them looking to Portland if they want to cash in on their valued assets that aren't really on the timeline of a rebuild. If Memphis wants to go in the direction of adding a top-tier glass cleaning 5, they could go after DeAndre Ayton. Or if they want to add a big wing from Portland, they could go after Jeremy Grant. I have them prioritizing those positional holes because they could use a big defensive wing. Desmond Bane is only 6'5" with a very small wingspan. Dinosaur arms, we've all seen the memes. And out west, you're going to have to guard a lot of these wings like Anthony Edwards, Kevin Durant. You'd rather throw a bigger body at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. You're going to want a guy to go against these top tier shot creators on the wing out west, and there's a lot of them. And you had that guy in Dillon Brooks, but he's in Houston now. And Memphis had to play Jaren Jackson Jr. at the center position a lot this year because of injuries and losing Steven Adams. And Jaren Jackson is not a real physical presence, and he's not a great rebounder. Playing him at the 5 full-time means getting punished on the glass full-time. You kind of want to have that bruiser, that like security guard next to Jaren Jackson, like he had in Steven Adams, so you're not getting killed on the glass. So as for Utah, they need to prioritize cashing in on Lauri Markkanen via trade. Lauri Markkanen, I don't think he's on the timeline of a team on a long-term rebuild. Going into an expiring contract, he's in his prime and he's had a really good season. There could be a lot of contending teams interested in his services, so I think Utah should cash in on his value. And they could clear up that logjam that they have in the front court with John Collins, Walker Kessler, and Markkanen. If you're able to offload Lauri Markkanen, then I think you could finally bring back Walker Kessler into the starting lineup again. And I think you could finally bottom out as a franchise, so you could give yourself the opportunity to have a top 5 pick in the lottery, especially for this 2025 draft. Brooklyn needs to focus on prioritizing Cam Thomas and making a decision on Nick Claxton. I don't really know why Cam Thomas wasn't being talked about for the most improved player. I didn't really hear any murmurs about him in that discussion. He's doubled his points per game from 10 to 22, more than doubled actually, once he was given the full-time starting position, and bro is still 22. We've seen all the signs that Cam can be a go-to guy offensively. I think Brooklyn should go into next season with him as the focal point of their offense and not Mikal, who is somebody who's better suited as a secondary or tertiary scoring option. And I also want to emphasize, I don't think Mikal had a horrible season. I just think the expectations for him to be this 25, 26, 27 point per game go-to guy, I think those expectations were a little bit too high. And I think he'd be better suited as the definitive second option behind a Cam Thomas. As for Nick Claxton, I don't really know what his value is or what his asking price is on the open market. And I don't think it's the best path to really, sign and trade him away and trade away Mikal Bridges and bottom out, because there's no point of doing that if you're Brooklyn. You don't have your own draft pick until 2028, so there's no incentive to bottoming out. And, the idea could be to make a sign and trade to allow Day'Ron Sharpe to step into the fold. I think he has some potential as a rim running, glass cleaning center. He might be able to approximate a lot of the value that you'd lose in Nick Claxton, and you can use Nick Claxton in a side and trade to fit like a positional need that you have. I think one very glaring one could be a defensive-minded playmaking point guard next to Cam Thomas. To a certain extent, Dennis Schroeder fits some of those needs, but he's kind of small in a backcourt of Cam Thomas, and Dennis Schroeder is kind of small, so I don't know, maybe Marcus Smart is a positional need. Or maybe Marcus Smart is somebody that can fit that positional need. He's a good playmaker. He's a damn good defender that can hide Cam Thomas's deficiencies. And, those could be mutual needs between Memphis and Brooklyn. Memphis definitely needs a center next to Jaren Jackson to cover him on the glass. And like I said, if Brooklyn opts to trade away Nick Claxton, Day'Ron Sharpe can slide right into that rotation as the starting 5, and they could parlay him into somebody like Marcus Smart, who I think would be a really good fit next to Cam Thomas. So just an interesting thought. As for Houston, very simple one. I got them prioritizing internal development. Despite missing the play-in, I think everybody can agree that this was a damn good year for the Rockets. Ime Udoka actually had them looking like a competent NBA team and not like a glorified AAU team. Şengün took a major step this year, displayed the post-scoring ability and post-playmaking ability, and I think he's now trusted to be a reliable offensive hub. Jalen Green had the best stretch of his career when he was worried about fatherhood. Amen Thompson had an all-rookie caliber year. Jabari Smith showed major strides with his efficiency and impact defensively and on the glass. Veteran acquisitions Brooks and Van Fleet came in and provided immediate defensive impact on the perimeter, bolstering Houston to a top 10 defense. Like I said, damn good year for Houston. So just try to keep that momentum, with internal development from Şengün, Green, Thompson, Jabari, guys who can be the core pieces of their rebuild. As for Atlanta, I think they got to make a seismic shift with their roster. I think they got to separate the backcourt, the DeJounte-Trey pairing. They got to add size and defense. 2 years in, and this backcourt hasn't gotten Atlanta back to sniffing a return to the Eastern Conference Finals. DeJounte and Trey were the best versions of themselves when the other was off the court. I think that was particularly true with DeJounte Murray. This team was one of the worst defenses in the entire league, and they need more large athletic wing defenders, especially one next to whatever point guard you choose to roll into your future with. DeJounte was supposed to be an elite defender in the backcourt to hide Trey's deficiencies on that end, though that hasn't been the case, and he's just been more so kind of just above average on that end, if I'm being honest. I think they have to decide between the two. Trey would be the trade chip that nets you the most value in return / the best player in return. And I want to emphasize best player because Atlanta should not go into trade discussions with either Trey or DeJounte with the goal of adding young players and draft picks for the future. They need to get a quality starter in return that fits the potential core of DeJounte and Jalen Johnson. That should be your duo if you're trading away Trae Young. Getting a player to add an impact immediately is not somebody that you're hoping to build with 3 to 4 years down the road. Because you gave up so many picks away, there's no point of really bottoming out. You kind of got to keep going for it and contending and competing. So yeah, I would have them prioritizing dangling Trae Young on the trade market to add somebody that can support a dynamic duo of Jalen Johnson and DeJounte, because I really think Jalen Johnson can be a high teens or low 20 point per game scorer if he continues to develop and he continues to get a lot of playing time. You kind of make him a priority of your offense and your team moving forward. And I'm thinking an ideal guy to go after would be Devin Vassell, like a 6'5", 6'6", 3-and-D 2 guard that can play off of DeJounte, somebody that can create their own offense from time to time. I'm thinking a guy that can fit that exact mold is Devin Vassell. He averaged 19.5 points per game on 47% from the field, 37% from 3 on 6 attempts per game. He's a very capable secondary playmaker, averaging 4 assists per game, playing with Wemby, and he's improved every year that he's been in the league regarding his playmaking. That was a career high for him, and he only averaged 1.6 turnovers. He's kept that assist-to-turnover ratio pretty high. He's a good defender, and I think he has the upside to be even better. He's only 23. I think I like that fit in the backcourt a lot more going forward. And there's mutual interests with San Antonio because they're looking to add a top-tier point guard, you would assume. So Devin Vassell could be a name that I'd be intrigued with adding to this Atlanta team. Don't really know what the exact trade package would be, but I do like the fit of Vassell next to DeJounte Murray and building with Jalen Johnson as a focal point of your team and your offense going forward. An emphasis for Chicago should be making Coby White a focal point and trading away Zach LaVine if possible. Coby White has proven that he can be around a 20 point per game guy at the 2-guard position. Took real monumental strides this season as a full-time starter with Zach LaVine out of the fold. Probably going to be a runner-up for most improved player, and I think he can continue to improve so he can just about approximate the amount of scoring that Zach LaVine provided. And he's a better playmaker than Zach, and he's a better defender. He's younger than Zach, and he's on a much better contract than Zach LaVine. The Chicago team proved that they can be successful without Zach LaVine in pretty much a full season, and that was without Lonzo Ball as well. So I think this team should try to move forward with Kobe White as more of a focal point, along with DeMar DeRozan. Hope for Lonzo Ball to come back and try to offload Zach for I don't even know what, just something that gives you more cap flexibility in the future. As for Sacramento, they could use a lot of self-evaluation this offseason. It was great for them to make the playoffs as a 4 seed in 2023, ending that horrible playoff drought, but now with expectations present and an improved Western Conference, Sacramento fell to the play-in and lost in the play-in to miss the playoffs as a whole. What's the route for Sacramento to continue being a factor in the West like they were in 2023? Looking internally, there's really only one way they can improve, and that's if Keegan Murray continues to improve. If he becomes a fringe all-star caliber talent, and that's no guarantee because progression is never, I shouldn't say never, more often than not, progression for young players is not something that's guaranteed to be linear. Fox and Sabonis have pretty much already hit their ceilings. They're in the primes of their careers, and they're going to be entering their late 20s/early 30s sooner rather than later. Sacramento has to ask themselves, are they complacent? Are they satisfied with being a team that perennially may or may not make the playoffs? Because that's their trajectory right now, if I'm being honest. If they're fine with that, then cool, there's no significant adjustments that need to be made. But if they actually want to be meaningful players in the West, a significant shakeup may need to happen. And I don't really know what that shakeup is, to be honest, but Sacramento kind of has to ask themselves, are they fine with where they are now? And last but not least, the Golden State Warriors. They need to get bigger, younger, and more athletic. That was my biggest problem with them throughout this season, and a lot of this was evident in their play-in loss to Sacramento. Oftentimes they were just killed in the paint. They looked slow on the perimeter, lack of rim protection, lack of a glass cleaning presence, not many stoppers on the perimeter. Stephen Curry and Chris Paul were picked on due to size, and a lot of the time they were on the court together. Klay Thompson's loss of mobility was exploited. They just looked small, old, and unathletic a lot of times throughout the season. Internally, a lot of this can be alleviated if they opt to prioritize the younger guys that have shown potential and prowess moving forward. Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski, Trey Jackson-Davis. In playing these guys more, you kind of have to evaluate if Kuminga can be a second option next to Curry, averaging 20 points per game. Can he be a star, like a fringe all-star? Is there another step for him to reach if he gets a full-time starting position and can consistently get 30 minutes per game plus? Can Podziemski be the long-term starting point guard next to Curry, somebody who's young, athletic, he has a lot of upside on the defensive end and can handle the ball from time to time, crashes the glass really hard? A lot of their development has to come from within because I don't see an avenue in which Golden State adds a star in free agency. They're capped out, and I don't see them adding one via a trade because they don't have that much draft capital. So for Stephen Curry's last years, if Dunleavy wants to capitalize at Curry performing at this tier, I estimate it to be about 2 to 3 more years if he wants to capitalize on it. I don't think a star, all-star, or all-NBA caliber talent is walking through that door anytime soon. He's going to have to prioritize development internally.